Hello, welcome to Municipal Focus. My name is Kevin Tocci and I will be your host for the next 30 minutes. This particular show, we usually delve into topics that deal with your local community. It could be government, it could be school-related, budgets, elections, things like that. We can get more intricate with this particular show than, let's say, we do a crosstalk or a Bring It On. It's close in nature to By the Numbers, but By the Numbers, it's as it is. We talk budgets with By the Numbers. So we have a great show for you today. We are privileged to have a member of the Whitman Hanson Regional School Committee. She is an elected official as one of 6 that sit on the school committee. There's 10 total. We have Dawn Byers who is joining us. Dawn, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Kevin.
How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you very much.
You got to, if you will, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Certainly. So I am a Whitman resident, not a Whitmanite, but a 22-year Whitman Hanson resident. I lived in Hanson for 10 years. My oldest daughter went to McQuon, actually, kindergarten and first grade. And then I found myself moving over to Whitman. I do have 2 children in the school system, and just really excited to be a part of the community.
What is it about the Whitman Hanson area that you like? Again, you said you lived in Hanson for 10 years, decided to stay in the area. What are some of the nuances, the things that make this region, at least the school district, unlike any others?
Well, I'm born and raised on the South Shore, and I think just the location itself of the South Shore. And when I was looking for homes, I really believed all South Shore towns and school districts were the same, all offering similar education. Was happy to just be nearby family too. Yeah.
What made you wake up one day and go, I think I want to serve on the school committee. I think I'm going to run for office. What made you do that?
Well, before I decided to run for office, it was about 4 years ago. I am a working mom, and I was at home taking care of my family, just like all other working moms and dads. They doing the laundry, food shopping, and so forth. And I got a call from a Hanson mom that I had known, and she said, "Did you know the librarians were laid off? And did you know that all 4 libraries have closed at the schools?" And even though I had kids in school, I hadn't heard that, and I didn't know it. And I said to myself, what could be causing a drastic cut like this? So I attended a meeting with a group of parents, and I began to listen and learn about budgets and get more information. And with my own personal background in financial accounting, I turned out to have more questions than answers I was getting. So over the years, attended more school committee meetings and got involved. And I really trusted, even during that time, while I was still working, taking care of my family, that town leaders and those elected officials were making decisions in the best interest of families who were busy. And I soon found out that wasn't the case.
Getting involved with the school committee, what's it like to see how a municipality runs, a municipal government, seeing how a town puts together its budget, knowing that there is a major portion that goes towards educating our children?
Right. It is a team effort, first of all, I would say, not only with 10 members of the school committee. I recognize that first and foremost. I'm one of 10, as well as the teams up at Town Hall and Finance Committee. So it takes everyone working together to come together, and the school is the biggest budget of the town. It's actually its own entity, being a regional school district. But we are 46% of the Whitman budget, 44% of the Hanson budget, and we have almost 500 employees.
It's fantastic.
497 employees. So
it's a big number.
Yeah.
And you were kind of involved in numbers and budgets prior to being elected. You were one of the folks who was very vocal during the town of Whitman's, the weeks, the days leading up to town meeting where you were vocal, and so a couple of times you would stand up at a selectmen's meeting and go, here's something I noticed.
Right, right. And I was just using the tools online with the Department of Local Services, Department of Revenue, and just looking at, municipal numbers and really educating myself to see how I could help and really help the schools at the same time and just maximize our dollar. Like I said, you want to get the most value for your dollar too. We're using taxpayers' money, and we want to be sure that we're maximizing that as best we can.
What were the first 6 months like? What are some of the things that you feel that you've accomplished or that you've been involved with that you could tell the viewers?
I was fortunate to attend some conferences with school committee, and networking and education is just invaluable. Two things. I also found with the Mass Association of Regional School Districts, they do offer financial reports of your member towns. So this is available to school committees so they can make budget decisions based on the finances and the hard numbers of their towns, rather than sort of guessing or speculating on what that is. So that would be the Mars report that was brought forth. Also, one of the conferences talked about the Student Advisory Committee. And at school committee, we do have a student rep who talks to us about updates, but now we've been able to expand that and learned that school committees should work together with an actual advisory committee, a group of students, and even expand that to the middle schools too, and hear what their voice is. So,
when you're looking at this again, you mentioned about the Mars report. What's Mars? What's that acronym for?
That's Massachusetts Association of Regional Schools.
Okay. And what is the idea of the report? What does it basically kind of give a pecking list of different communities, what they get when they team up? I mean, we got Whitman Hanson. We also have Bridgewater Raynham, just to name a couple.
Right. It's almost demographic of Whitman and then a demographic report of Hanson. So it will give us really the details of the population as well as the municipal side and those finances. So it helps when you're talking about budgets, and it talks about excess levy capacity, and it talks about free cash and availability of those things.
The thing that I've always found interesting as someone who has worked as a reporter and who has held conversations with folks who try to put together budgets for their school district, and that is that many years ago, is it more than 25 years ago, we had something called the Ed Reform Act. This was something that folks who may not know, this was a lawsuit that was brought forth by somebody who was in the city of Brockton. I want to say it was a student who had something. It was a series of students who brought forth this initiative that helped to change how education was funded, correct?
That's correct. It was 1993.
Yeah.
And prior to that, all education funding at schools was provided by local property taxes. And you're correct. The lawsuit case was McDuffie versus the Secretary of Education. And Jamie McDuffie was a student in Brockton, and her family did agree to this lawsuit. What is interesting is that there were actually 16 plaintiffs named in that lawsuit, and they were 16 students from across the state. 2 of those students were from Whitman Hanson. Whitman and Hanson was part of the McDuffie lawsuit, which tells you that at the time there was a student and family in both towns of Whitman and Hanson that recognized the differences in funding between different communities for education. And just to back up, the lawsuit, the case claimed that there was a violation of the plaintiff's rights to an adequate education. and also an equal opportunity to education. And this was per the education clause of the Massachusetts Constitution. So that's the basis that these 16 plaintiffs knew they deserved an education that was equal to other towns. And part of this McDuffie case, these 16 towns and plaintiffs used 3 comparable towns to really prove their case. These other 3 towns were Brookline, Wellesley, and Concord Carlisle. What they did was show the difference in the wealth of the 2 different communities and how those communities of Brookline were able to provide a better education for their students versus a lower wealth community.
So we know that so following on its heels, and again, being somebody who has done enough research that has reported on this, the Student Opportunity Act that was signed by Governor Baker just a couple of months ago was basically because the state was on the cusp of yet another lawsuit. My understanding is that there were many communities. Brockton was leading the charge, but there were other communities like the Lowells, like the New Bedfords, and other communities who were saying there's an issue when it comes to funding education and doing it properly, and not just kind of a blanket type of thing, whether it was the how the formula was when it came to providing proper aid, whether it was the amount that you would give per pupil. We know that there's great representatives, state representatives who were in this district, whether it was the former state rep Jeff Deal, whether it's the current state rep Josh Cutler, to Allison Sullivan. The push has been every year when it comes to boosting the amount of money per pupil. They've had to kind of put in an amendment saying, can we boost this up to $50 per pupil, so at least these communities can be able to get a little bit of a bump. What's your thoughts in regards to how this law that was signed in November, how is this district going to benefit, in your opinion, or as far as some of your research to date?
Right. Well, the numbers have been released by the governor, and it shows that Whitman Hanson itself is not going to see any significant increases. We will get the 30 minimum per pupil, which is written into the legislation. But truthfully, right now, the district is getting $24.8 million in state aid every year. So we have, last year's budget was $52 million. Again, a very big budget for a lot of employees and a lot of students. But at $24.8 million in state aid every year, when you look at all 87 regional school districts, that $24.8 million puts us at the top. We are at number 5, and we are in the company of a Greater Lowell, Greater Lawrence, Wachusett, and Greater New Bedford, and then it's Whitman Hanson. So would I love to see more funding from the state? It would help our students, sure, but we are already getting actually more aid than the foundation budget would allow us right now for our enrollment.
Then as somebody who is, so some of this information that you're giving me is interesting, because we're right around the corner. We're a month or 2 away from probably hearing what the assessment's going to be for each community. I'm sure that that there's already a percentage that each, and this is an annual, as to what the assessment is. Right. So what do you do? Is there an issue with the budget? Is it an issue with the method as to how the assessment is funded? What is it?
Well, the state does give each town their minimum required contribution. So, and that is the essence of Education Reform Act. It is how the foundation budget starts. And again, I'd like to say that Education Reform Act, this was landmark legislation, and we started creating the first in the nation foundation budget. I actually think it's interesting that we've never heard that Whitman and Hanson were part of this landmark legislation before. I think it's something we should be proud of going back to '93, because we, were part of this really nationwide movement for funding. But getting to the assessment this year, it is a minimum required contribution, and that will continue to go up as the foundation budget rises, because the state does provide a target share amount that they want the towns to be contributing at. And there's a target aid percentage too. And as I said, right now we're getting more state aid than it calculates out to be, according to the DESE website.
Well, the thing that has been bandied about by whether it's different stakeholders, residents, whether it's skirmishes that break out on social media, you name it, is the way the assessment method that the school district has been using one method, and that there is going to be a move to go towards something called a statutory method.
Correct.
What's your understanding of the two methods, and what are the conversations that you've been immersed in with people who are concerned on both sides of the financial fence?
Right. Well, there are two methods, and they're both valid. The statutory method, ironically, does factor in your minimum contribution first, and that's because it does take into account each town's wealth factor. And it goes back again to the Education Reform Act. That was the lawsuit. They recognized different towns have different levels of wealth.
Right.
So here we are now, our own two towns, recognizing that while it's very, very slim, one town is wealthier than the other. I'm not saying they are wealthy, but you're never going to have exactly equal. So it kind of comes full circle that this was part of what Whitman Hanson was involved in back in '92, right before Ed Reform, and here we are talking about statutory right now. I would like to ask if I could read an excerpt.
Please do.
This is from a town report, and it is written by the superintendent of schools. So it's a quick two
Jeff
paragraphs.
Simonek?
Not necessarily,
Oh,
and
okay.
I'd like you to maybe see if you can determine what year based on this writing.
Ooh.
It says, the past year has been a difficult one for the town as a whole, but in particular, it has been traumatic for the schools. Sadly, a number of quality staff members have fallen victim to budget cuts. In addition, very important programs have also been eliminated. While quality teaching continues at all grade levels, many staff members are showing the ill effects of having their jobs cut and restored or almost cut. In addition, many people see what lies ahead and work every day with the apprehension and uncertainty that accompanies budget cutbacks. The previous paragraph is an exact quote of the first paragraph of last year's annual report, and unfortunately is accurate again this year. The continuing pattern of cutbacks is having a devastating effect on Whitman Public Schools. Citizens who see children going to school every day and acting like children have always acted should not misinterpret those appearances to indicate that all is well in the schools. 3 years of continued devastation have taken a toll that will not soon be erased. Class sizes have soared, materials are not available, buildings continue to deteriorate. Our children are not like highways. A year of education that is negatively impacted in a child's life cannot be restored at a later date. Staff have worked very hard in spite of all the setbacks, but they are human and are showing signs of the effects of the continued pattern outlined in the first paragraph. The negative impacts of budget cutbacks are beginning to yield compounded negative interest. Hopefully, the tide of erosion can be stemmed. The system can be stabilized and we can begin to recover and grow again.
My goodness.
Sounds like last year.
Sounds like last year, but it also sounds like maybe the early 90s.
Exactly.
1989
and 1990.
Okay.
Was written right before we regionalized in 91.
No, it wasn't anybody who has a performing arts center named after them, is it?
No, this was Dr. Avery, Raymond Avery.
Okay.
Yes, not Dr. McEwen.
Okay.
But it tells a story that this was 30 years ago, but it could have been written last year. So when we talk about the statutory method, and I know that's causing pain between two communities, my heart breaks because we know we can fix this. And the reason the statutory method was part of education reform was to solve these problems. And we did solve these problems back in '91. We regionalized, we got that benefit. Ed reform came in, gave us a lot of state aid. But at the same time, we were supposed to continue contributing as a town. We were supposed to keep up that level. And I really feel that going back, there were points where the towns may have pulled back, and they may.
See, my other guess was going to be maybe right around the time when Prop 2.5 became a law in the early '80s, because there was those were tough times as well. But the idea was people wanted to kind of put a halt to the continued raise of property tax. They wanted to kind of cut it off at a certain point.
Right, keep people accountable.
Keep people accountable. Yeah. So that was my other guess. But yeah, it was the '90s where either that I thought it would some of the problems. So seeing that there are that these communities, the two communities, Whitman and Hanson, that there are some folks who kind of are at odds, because there's going to be an impact one way or the other. If you stayed with the former, the wealth-based method, the town of Whitman could not sustain, and we would see
the per pupil method.
Yeah, the per pupil, right? But that's more of a wealth-based, correct? And then the statutory, which is kind of a little bit more fair and equitable. Am I correct?
Right.
So, knowing that now what's happened is the pendulum is swinging, where now Hanson is looking. The early indications are that they could see a significant deficit. And let's not forget, you have a new town administrator over there who is walking into this. My understanding is this gentleman is a great numbers guy from Mansfield, and is gonna do wonders. But it's kind of difficult to be walking into a situation like, okay, you need to solve this budget deficit of $1 million, and you're in a community that may not necessarily want to go and vote for a Prop 2.5 override.
Right.
It's tough.
Right. And I understand, and I've said this at school committee, that it is a large number for Hanson. And it has been said that that's taking the burden off of Whitman, and that we now, we've got a break, if you will. My goal is to continue advocating on the Whitman side too. As I just said, the towns need to continue to provide. I see this as an opportunity to move the district forward with both towns continuing to contribute, to get us out of what I just read and what we've suffered the last couple of years, and really longer than that, but most recently just level services, and last year with the cuts of 19 positions not restored or not filled. Certainly some people retired and they just didn't refill those positions, but I really hope that Whitman will rise to the occasion also and continue to keep funding education as needed.
My understanding, according to my notes here, there's a little bit of a tour that was done on some of the buildings. Was this for the general purpose to see are there going to be any capital expenditures needed in the future as part of the overall budget plan?
The tour, I understand, is done annually by the superintendent for school committee members. Okay. So that is done, before school opens, and it shows us, the condition of the buildings and what changes they've done, and what updates they have, and how they've made improvements based on any prior capital expenditures. So that was interesting for me to attend that and get a good picture.
We got less than 5 minutes left.
Okay.
Time flies when you're having fun. You seem so serious and devoted to your job. Are you somebody who at least has a little fun from time to time?
I do a lot. Thank you. I do want to give props to the Hanson PTO for the polar plunge. I did participate.
You were freezing for a reason, were you?
I was. I don't usually like cold water whatsoever, but it was awesome. It was a lot of fun. And then this coming weekend, even though our Patriots are not in the Super Bowl, I have my squares, I have my numbers, so we'll be watching and rooting.
You won't say who, though, right?
I'm a big fan. Yeah, we'll see.
Anything new going on in the schools before we let you go? Anything new that folks should be apprised of?
Yeah, and I did want to mention, just in regards to budget too, regarding the community survey. We didn't get to touch on that, but that's something that Whitman did, and they really put a lot of effort into that. And I do believe the community does want to support the schools, and the survey said that there is upwards of 60% of the respondents of that survey did say they would support an override.
How invaluable was that study that was conducted by Bridgewater State?
It was important. It was important, and like the Board of Selectmen said, to hear what the community wants. And they did say the most important issue facing them is the schools, and that they would support an override. So as far as changes in the school, I do like to tell people how we have changed with the times as far as social emotional learning. And I do have a child in the schools who got to take advantage of a new class that's being offered at Whitman Middle 2 years ago. It's called CITY, and it stands for Concerns Impacting Today's Youth. So it was implemented by actually a science teacher. And she recognized there were teaching moments throughout the day on how students were interacting, social media, and just making good choices. So she came up with this curriculum, and I think it's great. She moved from science. They used to offer wellness and fitness, so they were able to blend this into a new class. And those are the type of things the schools are doing to support students as best they can in this changing environment.
Just got a moment or two left here. Anything we haven't touched upon, or anything you want to say to the fine folks who are watching this on WHCA?
I'm welcome to listen to both Whitman and Hanson residents. Even if you don't have a child in the school, I'm your school committee member. So you can meet me at a meeting, school committee meeting. I am on Facebook. You can email me, the district email website. And I have office hours at the Whitman Library too, coming up February 8th.
Wow, that's fantastic. Well, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
You got it. And thank you very much for tuning into programs like this one, Municipal Focus. And if there is a particular topic or an idea or suggestion for guests for any of our shows, whether it's Bring It On, whether it's Municipal Focus, Crosstalk, By the Numbers, just a few examples, drop us a line. info@whca.tv is your best way to contact us. Until next time, have a great day.